Wherever I wander, I try to find the essence of that place, a personal symbol I can hang onto forever as a memento. It wasn't until my last day that I found my meaningful connection to Mexico City. Viva la vida. Long live life. Mexico City was noisy. At least where I was staying was noisy. I probably chose poorly. Although my suite was in one of the recommended neighborhoods, the building, alas, overlooked a very busy street. So much so that the establishment provided 2 sets of earplugs on the nightstand. Sirens and the steady bass of a nearby nightclub went on all night and into the early hours. A brief respite of calm and then the honking of car horns as my alarm in the morning. More than once the first day I wondered, what was I doing here? Mexico City seemed to belong to the rambunctious, the loud, the outgoing, the party lovers. Was there any quiet refuge for an introvert like me? I will answer this question now. A resounding yes. And not only that, I'm already planning future return trips. When I got back from my trip, the first question I was asked was, did I feel safe? Without going into why that was people's first concern, as a solo female traveler, I felt very safe. I felt safe walking non-touristy areas by myself. I felt safe using public transportation, which included the subway system and the buses, by myself. I have no doubt that there are sketchy areas in Mexico City, like any other big city in the world, but I did not find myself in any places that felt dangerous to me. I visited towards the end of winter, where there were mostly warm, sunny days, and some jacaranda trees had begun flowering. I was told by a local that summer was their rainy season and so not ideal for visiting. The clothing also tends to be more modest, even in warm weather. Dressing like you're at the beach, such as Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, or Mazatlan, is not what the city folk wear, even casually, as I noticed. In a city as energetic and vibrant as Mexico City, I did find my quiet refuge. If you've seen my Paris videos, you would know that I gravitate towards bookstores, green spaces, and cemeteries. I was happy to find that Mexico City has some lovely offerings that made my stay a pleasant and surprising one. My favorite neighborhoods all have 2 things in common. One, they have lots of tree-lined, shady streets, very green and inviting, and also quieter and less dense. Condesa, Roma, and Juarez have the picturesque older buildings, some with a striking Spanish, Moorish architectural details, along with leafy avenues. They're a joy simply to wander and explore. Condesa especially has 2 large, beautiful parks perfect for strolling and lingering, Parque Espana and Parque Mexico. These neighborhoods also have many modern and upscale restaurants that were phenomenal, from intriguing cocktails to creative menus. I was able to dine very, very well in Mexico City. While great restaurants are plentiful in Ciudad de Mexico, I have to extol the street food scene. I admit that I take after the great late Anthony Bourdain on this topic. Getting to know a city means extensively wandering in and eating among its streets. In Mexico City, you are spoiled for choice. The best stalls are not in the touristy areas. They are likely where the workers stop by for lunch, around metro or bus hubs, where they can grab something to eat on the way to or from work. Authentic stalls won't have posters with photos of the food or a menu, and run away if any signage is in English or if anyone manning the stalls speaks English. If you are hesitating to dive in because of stomach issues, know that any stomach issues you're likely to have is because you're a foreigner and your gut is not used to the native bacteria, not because something's wrong with the way the food is prepared. Just don't drink the tap water and only eat cooked food. If you want to eat a salad or any greens or anything that's not cooked, I suggest taking an Imodium prior to dining. This is a tip from an American doctor who travels widely. Eat at stalls where there is a crowd already, which is social proofing and never fails. Don't worry if you don't speak Spanish, just point to someone else's plate that looks good to you and they'll prepare you the same. I ate street food several times and I always immediately ordered another plate after finishing the first order. Bring your own drink, you pay after you eat, and it's cash only. Even though I prefer the quieter neighborhoods, as a first-time visitor, I could not avoid what is probably the most tourist-dense area of Mexico City, which is Centro Historico, the historical center. The main draw for me was the Gran Hotel, featured in the opening scene of the James Bond movie Spectre. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the most spectacular opening sequences of the franchise, incorporating the Gran Hotel and Plaza de Constitucion, but from above. And not only that, it takes place during Day of the Dead, so really leaning into Mexican culture, even if Bond ended up blowing up a few old buildings. The Gran Hotel was more stunning in person. I think because in the movie, a lot of the beautiful details are obscured by the gorgeously costumed extras. But if you watched a lot of my Parisian videos, you know that I am obsessed with Art Nouveau architecture, and the Gran Hotel simply swept me off my feet. It's free to look around the lobby, but to ride up the wrought iron elevator with the beautiful stained glass, you either have to have booked a room or dine at their terrace restaurant. I came in for a Saturday brunch and was sat at the balcony overlooking Plaza de Constitucion, an experience I highly recommend. A fantastic brunch, excellent service, and a great view to boot. Plus, you get to look at this breathtaking stained glass ceiling close up. your meal, I suggest walking up the pedestrian-only street, which has very little interest to me other than this. Dulceria de Celaya, the oldest sweet shop in Mexico City. At the end of the pedestrian-only street is Bellas Artes. The name speaks for itself. A beautiful exterior and the Art Deco interior is a must-see. The lobby is free to roam. I lingered in the park outside Alameda Central with its endless fountains and numerous shady benches to rest. Up the street from Bellas Artes is probably the most beautiful postal office I've ever seen. The building itself is of the medieval style, but the inside is a golden palace where every detail from the ornate twin staircases to the light fixtures is a marvel to behold. It's free to visit, as is the little postal museum. Check out the mural made of postage stamps. My last must-see in Centro Historico is the House of Tiles, now occupied by Sanborns, which is a Mexican retail and restaurant chain. There's nothing really special about the restaurant other than the setting and that they have a live musician. You don't have to dine in the restaurant to look at its 15th century interiors. If you've been to Seville, Cordoba, or Granada, the House of Blue Tiles, formerly the Blue Palace, will seem familiar to you. The building itself is covered in gorgeous blue tiles whose source is either China or the city of Puebla. No one is quite sure. This old and beautiful building is full of stories, from spendthrift, aristocratic sons, forbidden love ending in a stabbing, even the miraculous image of Christ appearing after an earthquake. I managed to squeeze in a couple of bookstores during my visit, and for any bookworms out there doesn't appear to be a strictly English language bookstore in Mexico City. However, there is a chain of cafe bookstores called El Pendulo, which has sizable English language sections. Upon recommendation from one of the clerks, I discovered a new Mexican poet, one of my newfound treasures. I'm from California, so I've lived through a few earthquakes. But I'm impressed that the Mexicans have a citywide PA system in place, which we do not have. Upon a little research, I found that this citywide alert was put in place in response to the devastating 1985 earthquake, which registered as an 8.0 and left thousands dead and billions in damage. I did not feel any tremors at all, and after 10 minutes, everyone went back inside and traffic resumed. Just a part of life in Mexico City. I visited a total of 3 cemeteries and attempted the 4th, to no avail. The first is called the National Cemetery, which is curious because it is solely dedicated to American soldiers. The second was the Panteon de San Fernando, which is very small but very old. In it are some famous Mexicans, including Benito Juarez's wife, but also, to my great surprise, the famous American dancer Isadora Duncan. Here at the Pantheon, I got the inkling that the cemeteries in Mexico City aren't exactly free to wander in. I had to sign in, and a security guard trailed me the entire time. I understand why. These are beautiful old graves of importance and need to be protected. But I didn't get to relax like I usually do, away from the crowds. The third was Panteon de Dolores at the edge of Chapultepec Park, which was sprawling and exactly what I needed. It was a mix of very old, from the 1800s, to modern day. It also had a rotunda of famous residents, including Diego Rivera. While I'm always drawn to the old headstones and crypts, the Panteon intrigued me with its uniquely Mexican graves, colorfully painted in bright hues. Nothing mournful or dolorous about these tributes. These were celebrations of life. Nocturno, grito. Nocturne, the scream. I'm afraid of my own voice. Uselessly I search for my shadow. That shadow with no body passing by. Is that one mine? Or that voice, lost, wandering the streets, setting fires? What voice, what shadow, what waking dream I've yet to dream could be the voice, the shadow, the dream they've stolen from me? To hear the blood burst from my sealed heart, will I put my ear to my chest like fingers on a pulse? My chest will be empty and I disheartened, and my hands, hard pulses of chilly marble. Able to visit a church dedicated to Santa Muerte, the patron saint of death, depicted as a skeletal figure with a scythe. The Catholic Church officially condemns Santa Muerte. However, it is a fast-growing, authentic religion whose rituals resemble Catholic practices. Santa Muerte has been linked to organized crime, and the skeletal imagery speaks to a pagan or pre-Catholic origin. Santa Muerte is viewed as the patron saint not only of death, but the forgotten, the lost, and the poor. The church is free to visit, but donations are appreciated. One of my favorite discoveries was Chapultepec Park, which is vast. I only had one morning to explore and I barely scratched the surface. There is a man-made lake with paddle boats, a gorgeous botanical garden with banana trees, an amazing pond with bronze sculptures, and a greenhouse with beautiful stained glass. Best of all, a section of wooded forest dedicated to Mexican poets. I regretfully had to tear myself away from the park, which I can tell could have easily taken up my whole day. Coincidentally, Chapultepec is a fantastic place for a long run, pedestrian-friendly, no stoplights, and foresty. I have another recommendation coming up. Day I dedicated to the Frida Kahlo Museum in the quiet Coyoacan neighborhood. This neighborhood is more aligned with what I think of as a typical Mexican neighborhood, with fuchsia bougainvillea draped, colorfully painted buildings. There is also a park that is ideal for running, especially during hot days. Acres of shady trees and dirt footpaths. If you've done any preparation for Mexico City, likely you would have been warned to book your tickets for the Frida Kahlo Museum in advance. I will echo that warning and will further advise you to book these tickets the same time you book your flight and accommodations. The Frida Kahlo Museum is wildly popular. I foolishly decided to book after arriving in Mexico City and found that the website was sold out a whole month forward. I had to scramble and find a third-party company, which cost me an upcharge that cost more than the ticket itself. Poor planning on my part, but at least I got one. As I was standing in line to get in, people were coming up desperately asking if anyone had a spare ticket they could sell. No one did. You will be queuing to look at everything. The gardens have a bit more breathing room and a very beautiful space to linger in before or after the interior exhibits. It turned out to be a more special experience for me than I was expecting. I have admired much of Frida Kahlo's work as I am drawn to surrealism, but I got to know more about her, seeing how she lived, the studio where she worked, and her health struggles from such a young age. I love that although she and Diego Rivera lived here together, this space is dedicated purely to her, as it should be. It touched me to see her brushes and paints, the body cast she decided to turn into a piece of art, a symbol of how she transformed her pain into something beautiful. Her death mask is here, as are her ashes. But perhaps what touched me the most was her last painting of watermelons, upon which she wrote, "Viva la vida, long live life." This, despite a lifetime of physical pain from polio, accidents, and other health issues. This painted just 8 days before she died. Is there a more poignant and stirring motto for how to live? This last message is probably what I held most dear from my sojourn, and it was with reluctance that I departed from Mexico City the following day. It was much more than I expected, and I am eagerly looking forward to my return.